Passive Pockets is presented by Equity Trust.
Welcome to Passive Pockets, the passive real estate investing show brought to you by Equity Trust. I'm your host today, Chris Lopez, along here with my co-host, Paul Shannon. So today we interview Julie Holly. So she's an experienced active investor and passive investor. Now, she shares a lot of tips, but what really jumped out in the interview today was she shared some just those very low, tough points, right? As investors and entrepreneurs, we all have like great points. The last few years, there have definitely been a lot of low points that people have shared, and it's hard to publicly talk about it. But Julie comes on here and shares some powerful stories, also some just powerful lessons learned. So we're going to go through some, took some black eyes in this past market cycle, how she's dealt with from a mindset standpoint, and then move into some tactical, how do you start asking better questions? How do you look for better LPs? How do you look for better operators? So it is a great interview. Let's jump into it. Well, Julie, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on. Let's jump into it and just tell us about your background, please.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to this. Background is really eclectic, like a lot of investors, right? Most of us have backgrounds that are in the professional space, and then through our careers, we are looking for better strategies, and this is where a lot of us end up landing. So I am very similar to, I think, a lot of your listeners. I have a background as a public school educator, and I also have a background in real estate investing on the single family side. And when I was in the classroom, once again, I found myself looking for a better investment strategy. And what did I find? I found BiggerPockets. So thank God for BiggerPockets and for all the stories. Thank God for Monique Halm, who's the first woman I ever heard on a BiggerPockets podcast. And she's the first person that I ever heard discuss syndication. So I felt that morning going to the gym, driving, up the mountain road, I was like, this is the best morning of my life. So that's how I landed in the commercial real estate space. My family does have a background in residential real estate, going back 3 generations, but that's on the sales side, which is very different. And my husband is still a residential broker on the sales side. So real estate has always been part of life. And my first entry into the investment space at 25, house hacking, like Craig Curlup, that really changed our life and set us up in a different way.
So as you kind of evolved in the space, Julie, I'm fascinated to hear your story and just kind of how you've progressed from that moment, that aha moment. What's happened in between that time till now? Where are you in the space today?
It's such a complex, tangled web right now. I believe in full transparency and authenticity, all of it. And so right now it's really complicated. I got into the commercial real estate space with, like a lot of people, really blue skies. The horizon is bright, and because I operate from a posture of character, morals, values, integrity, and I see the best in people, I always just assume all things are going to go well. And so I went in with that attitude. And by the way, I still have that attitude, but it's recalibrated and grounded. I've learned that there are a variety of people in the space, and due diligence is absolutely necessary. But that process went from really building a portfolio in a very slow, intentional way. We started on the passive side because my intention was to go into the investor relations position. That was my heart and soul. It combines education. It provides, supporting investors and everything. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Everybody's going to win. And this feels completely in my wheelhouse. But through that process, starting on building a portfolio in a slow way on the LP side, just so I could have that experience and say, what do investors experience? What is it like wiring money to people that you really don't know, but you feel like you know well enough to send a chunk of capital to? It's like, I think everyone needs to have that experience. So my portfolio was built in a very small, very methodical way and a very slow way. And I thought that that was a very wise way, very prudent. I had very high standards for the partnerships I developed, meaning I want to create content with you. I will probably meet you in person. I live in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. So that actually is a thing, to meet people in person. And so I had these high standards in the vetting process that I thought would protect and buffer me and align me in the best right position for being able to sleep at night. Because at the end of the day, every one of us want to be involved in real estate investing because it is safe, stable, and it's going to, over time, be a fantastic investment opportunity. And so I always have like, hey, if I can sleep at night, that's the kind of investing I want to do. And if I'm going to invite outside capital, then I want to be able to sleep at night knowing that I have checked all the boxes and their capital is safe. In that process, I've invested in lots of cool things. Lots of apartment complexes. I'm involved in the assisted living space. And then I'm also involved in a ground up construction project. I have had projects that have gone sideways, and that has tested me in ways that were very unexpected, considering I grew slowly and with such a methodical process. So I'll pause there and say, what do you guys think so far?
Well, thanks for sharing all that. There is a lot of threads I want to tug on there. I want to start first, though, with kind of like you as an LP. Like, you say, hey, before you start structuring deals, you were writing checks yourself. So my two questions there is, what was the first check you wrote? And then, looking back, you got any like reflections you could share? Because we have a lot of people who are, hey, they've written their first check or about to, like, what's a huge learning experience that, you wish you could go back and tell yourself a number of years ago in that time machine? So like first deal and advice looking back.
All right. The first deal, and we're still in the deal. It should have already gone full cycle, technically.
Per the business plan, right?
The environment changed. And so we're still in it. For the first 2-3 years, we received fantastic distributions. It was phenomenal. I am like, man, this is 2-3x what we were getting off the single family side of life. And it was passive. I'm like, this is great. There was a fire at the complex, didn't have to deal with it. I'm like, this is exactly what we signed up for. Then the environment shifted, that market specifically shifted. And then we had, other elements, interest rates and such, that started affecting the performance. No capital calls. Hallelujah on that one. 0 capital calls, but we just know that we're in it for a while, and I'm confident we'll get our capital back. I don't know what the returns will actually end up looking like. I think we'll be made whole. That was a $50,000 investment. That's kind of the standard. Hey, if you want to get in, be willing to come in with at least $50K. Wasn't feeling like I wanted to write 6-figure check to do this, on the first go around. $50K felt like a happy medium. And my husband and I were both on the same page. So I really believe spouses and partners need to be aligned in the investing process.
Yes.
Please know what is going on in that process. I will say we went with a operator that is a very prominent figure, kind of a brand name, if you will, right? Like somebody that everybody in the multifamily space would recognize and was like, well, you know what? I've been listening to that podcast for a very long period of time. I feel like I'm hearing consistency with this person. And guess what? I still think that this person and that team, I still think they're great. I think that they're really grounded people. I'm still glad that I invested with them. So I think that's important. I think those of you who are listening to this podcast, high fives to you, because you really do get to know people, especially if you're listening over time. You can really hear the through line of how they operate and more importantly, what they're thinking behind the scenes of things. So it's a little bit about our first one.
It sounds like you've been through quite a bit, and I'd be interested to dig into kind of your asset allocation strategy today, what you're interested in, and how you kind of vet operators. But before we do that, I think it's kind of interesting to pick your brain on your mindset and how you've dealt with these challenges and how you've grown in the space. I listened to a podcast that you had been on as a guest prior to us recording this today, and you used a term on that I thought was really interesting and it really resonated with me. And it was receive and release, quote unquote. What does that term mean to you? And how have you used that as kind of a mindset and approach as both a passive investor and a fiduciary of other people's capital?
It goes so many different ways. That episode, it's amazing. If you are involved in personal development and really stepping into personal exploration, you could be like, whoa, that was such a long time ago version of me. So I'll answer it from this version. And that is, When we're willing to receive what the opportunities that are around us, it also requires us to release something. I teach the recalibration method, and this goes hand in hand with it. It's basically the expanded version of what I was saying in that episode. And that is that in order for us to be able to move forward with wholeness, we need to be present and say, I can't have it all. And what we really want in life is we kind of want to have that Jason Mraz song playing in our heads that we can have it all. And it's like, it's a great song. And the idea is really great. But the truth is that we have to offload some things so that we can onboard things. Think of it like if we were launching a rocket ship to outer space, those fuel cells are going to be released before it bursts through the atmosphere. But those fuel cells are absolutely necessary in order for it to go through the atmosphere. So it's not I can't have it all. It's what's the timing of things. So I need this to get started. But once I'm started, I'm going to need to release those things in order to receive the other opportunities that are ahead of me and that are all abounding around. And so constantly cycling through, what do I need to release and let go of so that I can receive? And if we try to hoarding is not a great look. I mean, as investors, we don't mind buying the hoarding place. Let's be real. Like, yeah, bring it on. But at the same time, we understand that it provides so much baggage and limitations. It's really important to have a specific process for releasing so that we can move forward in wholeness.
I think that's a really self-aware approach. I think that's amazing to be able to kind of like reflect internally on what it is you want, how to get there, and then also look at, from an accountability standpoint, where you've been and maybe take some of the good and go forward with it, and then release some of the outcomes that maybe were, not necessarily completely of your doing, but you had some, involvement in, so to speak. So with some of the portfolio challenges you had, can you relate it back to receive and release? And how have you kind of dealt with some of the challenges that you've had with passive investments?
On the active side, I've had some substantial challenges over the last year, and I know that I'm not alone. I am one of the few who has been willing to speak openly about it on social platforms or from the stage, because it needs to be normalized that we will have setbacks and that on the journey, we are going to win some and we are going to lose some. In fact, when I presented some information at a large event, a few hundred people, and this one man actually said in an appropriate time in the talk, yeah, I lost $70 million. It was completely beyond that person's control. It had to do with everything that happened in 2008 and losing financing and the financial collapse, and losing the funding when you already have like your structure going vertical. The willingness for us to say, we've had setbacks, and then to also, to your point of, how does that affect me? We all internalize that in different ways. And part of the initial way that I was internalizing it was inflicting a lot of self-pain. It was doing a lot of internal damage. It was hurting me. I was showing up small. I could even get glossy-eyed right now because I know all of my investors. And that's one of the things is that you should know the people that I have more of a boutique investment, firm. I want to know my investors. I know what every capital allocation is, and I know what that means for that investor. And so for that to be caught in the margins, and specifically, I have one investment that, to make it simple, I will say the asset management, there was mismanagement. And with that is going to be a complete loss for the investors. So understanding that, and if you go into investing believing, as I did, I am going to do everything in my power to mitigate risk. And then to have something like that come your way is like getting hit by 100 Mack trucks over and over and over and over again. It was the most painful experience I've ever had. If it was just my capital, I could be fine with that. But knowing the greater outcome. And so I stepped back. At the event I actually host a large in-person event. And I also have a private investor lunch. I told all of my investors at that lunch, like, in 2025, I am not offering public-facing investments. My focus will be to steward and to care for these parts of the portfolio. It wasn't the entire portfolio, but to really focus and isolate my attention onto what needed attention. Instead of, I'm going to try to expand more and bring more on, it's like, nope, this is a time where focus and attention. And I've had to step into roles that if you're stepping into an investor relation role, and that's what you're doing, and now you're taking on asset management, there's a learning curve.
Thanks for sharing all that. I really appreciate that because, yeah, as you know, and as you said, not many people do. So I don't know, in that deal you mentioned there, like, do you have like a specific mindset trick you do or exercise you do? Because that can get you in a very like overwhelmed, pity party, I suck, just, a very bad mindset, right? And that's absolutely part of the entrepreneur's journey and the investor's journey is you have your highs and they're high and you have your lows and they can be really, really, really low. And it's all about like how fast you get back out, right? And also so you don't cascade and just make more poor decisions because your mindset's at the low point. So like, I don't know, you expect to know how did you get yourself up in the right mindset? Like what steps did you take?
I'm writing down a note to myself because this is like the whiplash effect. And so even recognizing that there is going to be some whiplash that takes place, if it's internal or however it presents itself, it's going to happen. And so just being wide-eyed aware, thank God I'm in the personal development space also, right? Because it's like, okay, I know that whiplash is real and I know that I'm experiencing that. And so how do I protect everyone, including myself, with this whiplash? What I ended up doing was how I support my clients also. And it's been an interesting process. I allowed myself space to grieve. I allowed myself space to incubate, which sounds really odd, but there is a grief cycle that we have to walk through when we encounter these type of setbacks. And that doesn't mean that it takes months and years. It just means if we don't pause to actually go through a process of sorts to understand what has taken place, it will come back in our life in another way. The lesson will present itself until we learn it. And so I'm grateful that I allowed myself space to simply hit pause. I allowed myself, I think even men cry. So I gave myself space to cry the ugly tears of like, this hurts, right? And you never know how much it's going to hurt until you face it. I didn't realize how low that low would ever be because it wasn't even on my radar. It's like, this isn't going to happen to me. I know friends of mine who've experienced this, and I've watched and I've learned and I've mitigated risk. This will never happen to me. So I think I really got blindsided. And then allowing myself to say ownership. Okay, what part of this do I own? What can I learn from this experience to move forward? And in this case, I honestly ask better questions now. I'm a pretty good person when it comes to asking questions, but now there's a whole different level of questions that are being asked because you can't simply assume. So one of the responsibilities that I understand now is that one of the very things we love about the syndication space is that it is a collaborative effort. It is partnerships. And so if the three of us had a deal, maybe I'm investor relations and Paul's doing asset management and you're doing operations, Chris, and we're all like super happy. And we might have I was friends and I knew my partners, years before partnering with them. So I felt a super high level of trust and comfort in who they are as people. As much as we want to operate with that, there is accountability that should be there. There are deeper questions that should be asked. And not just be like, hey, so what's going on with the vacancy rate here? Oh, is this okay, let's dig into that deeper. Like, okay, we said that last month. We can't say that 2 months in a row. So like, let's dig in and asking, I'm just using that as a, suggestion, but just learning to ask very pointed, deliberate, in the weeds sort of questions is really important, holding people accountable. So that was one of my takeaways, but that also affects all of life. And so that old adage, trust and verify. It's not but, it's and. Trust and verify. And that keeps everybody healthy. It keeps everybody on the same page. But ultimately, we have to allow ourselves space to go through the grieving process, to release what is not ours, to reclaim who we are. I had to reclaim that I am a good person because it just destroyed me for months. And I just thought, I'm horrible. I am like a bottom feeder. This is terrible. And I really had to do some inner work that allowed me to reclaim. Like, that doesn't define who I am as a person. That's an event that took place, but that's not who I am. And that really led to a lot of beautiful work in my life.
It's just such a powerful story to know that, there's a human on the other end of this investment, right? You're not a stoic. And I know, I've heard you talk about Ryan Holiday and stoicism, and those are principles that you can take away from that mindset. But ultimately, we're human and humans make mistakes. And I like what you said about normalizing this. It's like you're trying to do the best you can, and you're offering an outlet for investors to join you on your journey on where you think is a great place to go. And sometimes these events don't work out the way that we plan them to. And you're somebody that's taking accountability for that, which I think is, something that I really, really respect. But how much accountability do you think falls on the actual LP themselves who invested with you? I mean, you've outlined the risks to these individuals. You've spelled that out, I'm sure, in subscription documents. You've provided due diligence, underwriting. You've tried to align the investment with the right profile of investor. You've given them all the information. At the end of the day, they make the decision to invest. So sometimes I feel like people point the finger, like if I go and I invest in Facebook stock and it goes down, I'm not going to blame Mark Zuckerberg and try to find his address and yell at him and send him bad letters. And, I just take accountability. I made a mistake. I timed it wrong, whatever. It was bad business. How much of that do LPs need to kind of consider and kind of look back in the mirror at themselves and say, you know what, I signed the paperwork. I made a decision. It's also my fault. Do you think there's not enough of that? Or is that something that you see investors coming to you and saying, you know what, we're in this together?
I think you just had a post on this, or recently, I think you shared something on LinkedIn about this. And I was like, preach it. I was so glad to see that out there because, really, and that, thank you. Because that was when I read your post and talking about it now, it's like, it's such a good full circle reminder of we're not in it alone. And off air, we were talking about control. And so a lot of times we can put the control on, well, I'm the GP, I'm the decision maker, I have all the control, therefore everything falls on my shoulders. And we completely null the voice of the LP. It's like, okay, well, they have capital, but they don't have a voice. They don't have control on this asset. And the reality is that it's like when we go to the polls and we cast a vote, they cast a vote. They said, hey, this is what I want, and I'm all in on this. There is, and that's like a very good recalibration on that because it's not just GPs who are involved. The LPs make that choice. So if you're listening and you are, looking for an LP position, the ownership is to actually understand what you're investing in and to understand yourself and your investor profile. If this money were lost, how is that going to affect my livelihood? How is that going to affect the goals that I have set for myself? It is so imperative to do that. And that understanding of what we're investing in, I think, is more important now than ever. Over the last, we'll say 7 to 10 years, more people have been investing in passive investments in the commercial real estate space than in previous, historical times. And with that, it just seemed easy. And it seemed like, oh, this is the very thing that I was missing in my portfolio all along. And early adopters, I'm just going to go write a check.
A generational opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the opportunity. So I don't want to miss out. I missed out on Bitcoin in '08. I'm not missing out on this, right? So actually get to know what you are investing in. And if that's an apartment complex or a mobile home park or assisted living facility or a triple net lease, whatever it is, just have some understanding so that you understand how to read the materials coming your way and know that it is your responsibility.
As you've progressed on your journey and you've come to these conclusions, when you talk to investors now, I'm sure you want to find the right investors that you feel are a fit to join you. So what kind of questions do you ask them to determine if it's the right type of partnership? And conversely, what type of questions should they be asking you?
I'm probably more selective now than ever before. Ever before. And you know what? I will say this, the LPs that are within my firm, they have been absolutely phenomenal. The feelings that they have not come out as, there's only one investor that came out in a personal attack way. Everyone else was disappointed and frustrated and obviously going through a process emotionally, but that process wasn't pointed at me. So I'm deeply grateful. I adopted a lot of investors who otherwise would not have received communications about the investment they were involved in by the way of how things took place. So if you have multiple people bringing in partners into a deal, that's how I ended up adopting these investors. Those investors were feisty. They were not happy with me. They were not, no, some of them were not very kind. And it was like, wow. And that's what really made me see the difference of the type of people I attract into my ecosystem. Most of them are educated. Most of them are grounded. This isn't the money that they're paying their bills with. This is a long-term investment. And so when I'm looking at investors, I actually want to be able to pick up the phone. So, I mean, I've been texting even this week, with different investors that are actually personal friends as well. And it's like, when you're crossing those type of lines, you need to be able to say what needs to be said. And so having those type of relationships where whatever truth needs to be spoken, it is going to be spoken and it will be surfaced. It's not going to be shoved and suppressed and put in a closet somewhere. And so that's a GP-LP thing, is what is that relationship that you want? Because maybe you just want to write your check and never talk to them, okay, great. You have some different options. Or maybe you're feeling like, I really want to invest and I want to feel like I'm part of this process. And so I'm going to invest with someone that I can reach, that I have a cell phone number for, that they don't get grouchy if I reach out to them. They're responsive to me and they're willing to answer the questions that I have that may arise. So I think those are really important questions. And that's like an investor profile that you're looking at. I want to know when I'm reaching out to an LP that I'm going to have a grounded conversation where whatever's taking place, we can work through it.
I'm glad you brought up that line of questioning, Paul, because I wanted to ask you, on the due diligence side of the deal now, right? As you're taking this one step further and kind of the other side, you talked about, you've strengthened the questions you're asking. So the due diligence on the deal and potential partners you're taking on, what tactical changes or tactical underwriting guidelines did you change, as you've just improved your DD? I
am more in the weeds, and that's not something where I lived. I didn't live in the weeds. And this is going to sound however it is going to sound, right? I didn't feel like I had to underwrite to, 20 different ways and, stress test 40 different ways if my partner, who is an expert at that, had already done that. If I can underwrite it, I can underwrite it. If I can underwrite it and it makes sense, and then I go deeper in the underwriting of my partner, who that is a skilled expertise. A lot of people offload and have other people do the underwriting for them. A lot of groups will do that. So that's a very common practice. By the way, if you're listening and you don't know that, that's a good thing to know. If it's important to you that, who you're investing with is underwriting on their own and what that looks like, ask those questions. Hey, do you do the underwriting? And to what extent do you do the underwriting? Or do you outsource this? Are you using AI for this underwriting? Because that's a thing now. So understanding that even on the LP side is really important. On my end of things, it's just far more meticulous. What is actually really taking place? And let me go not just with what I have, but let me take that deeper.
Julie, are there any common mistakes, and I'm talking about LP specifically, and not necessarily evaluating deals that you're presenting or that you have a stake in personally, but just in general, since you deal with a lot of limited partners, are there some common mistakes that you see folks make as they approach allocating into deals?
I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to answer that with a story. I was at an event I was doing a month ago. There was a pre-networking the night before. So I went to this thing and I came across a person. We'll make this so generalized. And the person ends up, they have a deal. And it seems like they're very new at bringing outside capital into their deals. I find myself talking to a woman, and this person comes up and the conversation goes around, she's trying to figure out what she wants to invest in. And he's like, well, I have a deal. And just simply pulls out the deal. And I was, just a little bit beside myself. And I started saying, well, that's great. You have a deal, but hey, let me ask you a question. What is your goal? Oh, you want to retire. Okay, what does that look like? What are your going into the weeds on what does your lifestyle look like? What are your actual goals? Let me understand, is that the best, like maybe that's the best thing for you. But so just being wide-eyed about on the LP side, like what are my goals? What are my dreams and my ambitions? But I need to be very aware as to who is soliciting capital from me so that I understand what is their motivation, what is their experience. Now, this person actually has a ton of experience developing. So I would personally be like, I would look at the deal, how that person went about presenting it, I would do it in a very different way. However, wow, experience checks all the boxes on the experience, just has not had the experience of outside capital. So I think really understanding those dynamics is really important.
Well, Julie, this has been really insightful. Like, we appreciate you taking the time, but also just really appreciate you sharing, some vulnerable stories and spots, right? It's something, as we all say in real estate, if you own properties, it's when, not if, right? When a tenant destroys your property, when they pay late, right? There's a lot of wins, it's not if, but when it happens. And same thing with passive investment, right? There's a lot of wins, not ifs. We all go through them. No one likes going through it, and no one likes publicly sharing it. But I know, Paul, and I really appreciate you doing that because it helps people, when they going through right now, hey, it might be the right message. It helps them, get back on track. So big thank you for sharing that. But where can people learn more about you and kind of plug in? Because I know you post a lot, you share a lot. How can people just learn more about you?
There are two great ways to learn about me. LinkedIn is one of my favorite places on the planet. So you can connect up with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people there. And then I have a podcast that's, almost 800 episodes deep called The Recalibration. And that's a really interesting space. So you have almost 600 episodes of real estate content. And then you have another 150, almost 200 that is filled with how do you recalibrate? And The Recalibration, the way you would find it, you'd still be able to access all the real estate episodes. But that's really honestly the journey of, wow, everything falls apart. And how do we respond? So if whatever you're going through in life, it'll be a very powerful place.
Well, Julie, we thank you for coming on. This has been a fantastic conversation and very, very powerful. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Today, we covered how mindset and mechanics work together. Julie showed how receive and release can keep investors focused on process, how your own due diligence as an LP can be helpful, and how to screen for operator alignment before you wire a single dollar. If this episode helped you sharpen your approach, follow the show and join the conversation at PassivePockets.com for checklists, live reviews, and community feedback. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy investing.